Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. It was a brisk autumn morning when Jasmine sprang the news on me as we shared a quiet breakfast. The sun filtered through the window, casting a warm glow that contradicted the chills settling over my heart. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice trembling with a feigned mix of surprise and fear. We hadn't planned for a child, not yet. Our marriage, though seemingly stable on the surface, had its share of rocky depths which we navigated with the care of two diplomats at war. Jasmine's eyes didn't meet mine as she spoke, focusing instead on her fidgeting fingers. "Okay," I replied, masking my confusion with calm. "What do you want to do?" She bit her lip, a well-rehearsed gesture of indecision. I think it's best if we don't keep it. I'm not ready, James." I nodded, understanding but detached, and later that day, I transferred the money for the procedure. It was a substantial amount, enough to make anyone pause, but Jasmine seemed relieved. 6 months later, the scene replayed like a cruel déjà vu. Another pregnancy, another plea for an abortion, another transaction. The suspicion gnawed at me then, an unwelcome guest in the back of my mind, but I silenced it with the hope that perhaps this was just fate's twisted way of testing us. But when the third announcement came, something within me snapped. The pattern was too strange, too convenient to be mere coincidence. This time, I decided to follow her. As Jasmine left for the clinic, I trailed discreetly in my car, the weight of my suspicions heavy in my stomach. She never made it to the clinic. Instead, she stopped several blocks away where a nondescript man awaited her. They exchanged brief words, and Jasmine handed him a stack of cash, the money meant for her supposed abortion. Then, they disappeared into a hotel, the final piece of the puzzle falling into place with a silent, devastating click. Hours later, I confronted her. The confrontation was a tempest, a clash of anger and betrayal. Jasmine's excuses fell on deaf ears. The truth was clear as the tears in her eyes weren't for our unborn children but for the corner she was now trapped in. "You've been using me," I accused, voice cold and steady. "All these lies, for him." Her silence was her confession. The aftermath was a blur of legal battles and shattered promises. I severed our ties with surgical precision, ensuring that Jasmine's deceit would cost her more than just money. Our divorce was swift, her social standing crumbled, and the life she knew disintegrated. As I walked away from the ruins of our marriage, a bitter taste of victory lingered on my tongue. I was free, but at what cost? The shadows of betrayal lingered, a dark cloud over my newfound solitude. The world seemed grayer after my divorce from Jasmine, and each day bled into the next with a monotony that was both comforting and suffocating. But beneath the calm surface, plans churned. I couldn't let her betrayal stand, the deceit had been too deep, the wounds too raw. A few weeks post-divorce, I dove into the heart of my retribution plan. It started with a call to an old friend, Marcus, who had once confessed his expertise in slightly less than legal information gathering. "Marcus, I need your help," I confessed over the phone, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. "James? What's going on, man? You sound serious." "It's about Jasmine. I need to know everything. Who the guy is, where he hangs out, any dirt you can dig up." There was a pause, a brief hum of consideration. "You sure about this, James? This sounds messy." "I've never been more certain," I replied, the edges of my words hard with resolve. "All right, I'm in. But we do this my way. Clean, no trails back to you." "Agreed." Days turned into nights, and Marcus delivered. He uncovered the man's identity, Derek, a small-time musician with a penchant for lavish spending and married women. The more I learned, the darker my thoughts turned. Jasmine had drained our savings to fund Derek's lifestyle, and now, armed with this knowledge, my next move crystallized in my mind. With Marcus's aid, I orchestrated a series of subtle but devastating blows: cancelled gigs, a mysteriously vanished social media presence, and anonymous tips to Derek's other acquaintances. His life began to unravel as systematically as he had helped unravel mine. Then came the confrontation. I confronted Derek one evening as he slunk out of a bar, his face worn and anxious. "Derek?" I called out, my voice calm, belying the pounding of my heart. He turned, startled, his eyes squinting in the dim light. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you. You're the guy who's been seeing my wife." Derek's face paled, understanding dawning as he took a step back. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married." "Save it," I snapped, stepping closer. "I want you to know, whatever you had is over. And whatever you think you're running away to, it's going to crumble just like you helped crumble my life." Fear flickered across Derek's face, a satisfying confirmation of his realization that his actions had consequences. I left him there, standing alone, a broken figure in the fading light of the street lamp. As I walked away, the first real smile in months played on my lips. Jasmine and Derek's downfall was the melody to my nighttime stroll, a symphony of retribution that soothed the chaos in my soul. Yet, the battle was far from over. Jasmine's part in this charade would come next. I had laid the groundwork, turning her confidant into his own disaster. Now, it was her turn to face the music. And I would ensure the tune was harsh and unforgiving. The thrill of Derek's downfall was short-lived, overshadowed by the looming confrontation with Jasmine. The stage was set, and as the night draped over the city, I prepared to close this painful chapter of my life. As I sat in my car outside her new apartment, a downgrade from the life we once shared, a mixture of anticipation and dread churned within me. I checked my watch, the seconds ticking by loudly in the quiet. It was time. Stepping out into the chilly night air, I approached her building, my steps firm and resolved. The buzzer echoed through the silence, a stark reminder of the distance between our past and present. "Who is it?" Jasmine's voice crackled through the intercom, hesitant and tinged with unease. "It's James. We need to talk, Jasmine. It's important." A pause hung between us before the door buzzed open. I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last, reaching her door as it swung open. Jasmine stood there, visibly thinner, her eyes wary but defiant. "James, what are you doing here?" Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, trembling slightly at her sides. "I know about Derek," I started, my voice calm but cold. "I know everything." Her facade cracked, just for a moment, and fear flashed across her face. "James, No," I cut her off sharply. "You've lied enough. It's over, Jasmine. Derek's life is falling apart, just like he helped you tear apart ours." Jasmine's eyes widened in shock, her lips parting but no words coming out. "You used me, drained our savings for him. And for what? Was it worth it, Jasmine? Was he worth everything?" Tears began to pool in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. "How could you do this to us?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Us?" I scoffed. "There is no us, Jasmine. There hasn't been for a long time. You made sure of that." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of our shattered past. "I'm leaving," I declared, the finality of my words sealing the void between us. "You'll receive the final divorce papers tomorrow. I suggest you sign them quickly and save yourself further embarrassment." Turning to leave, I paused at the door, glancing back at the shell of the woman I once loved. "I hope he was worth it, Jasmine. I truly do." With that, I walked away, the echo of my steps a somber melody in the quiet hallway. As I drove off into the night, the city lights blurred into streaks of color. I felt a release, a burden lifting off my shoulders. The path forward was unclear, filled with the unknown, but I was ready to face it. Jasmine and Derek were now ghosts of a past I was eager to forget. The retribution was complete, but the scars remained. As I looked ahead, I knew the road to healing was just beginning, and I was finally ready to travel it. The days that followed felt surreal, each moment tinged with the aftershocks of the chaos I had unleashed. I had imagined that the end of my revenge would bring peace, or at least a somber satisfaction. Instead, there was a void, an emptiness that echoed with the remnants of my shattered marriage. But there was one last act to perform, one final curtain to draw. As the city hummed with the oblivious rhythms of daily life, I made my way to Jasmine's new residence once more. This time, my steps were laden with a different purpose, a revelation that would sever our ties forever. I arrived just as dusk began to bleed into night, the sky a canvas of deep blues and purples. The air was brisk, the wind carrying whispers of winter. I rang the bell, and the door opened quicker than last time, Jasmine's face pale, her eyes wary. "James? What are you doing here again?" Her voice quivered slightly, the edges tinged with fear. "I'm here to end this, once and for all," I stated, my tone devoid of emotion. "I have something for you, something you need to see." I handed her an envelope, thick and foreboding. Jasmine took it hesitantly, her fingers trembling as she tore it open. Inside were photos, documents, all undeniable evidence of her infidelities, her lies, and something more. "What is this?" she gasped, her eyes scanning the contents, widening with every paper she flipped. "Proof," I said simply. "Not just of your betrayal, but of Derek's other affairs, his criminal activities, things you might not have known about." Her face drained of color, her body swaying slightly as if the ground beneath her had shifted. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice a broken mix of confusion and despair. "I know you didn't. You were too wrapped up in your own deceit," I said coldly. "But there's more. Look at the last photo." Jasmine fumbled with the papers, her hands shaking as she pulled out the last photo. It was a picture of Derek, but not as she had known him. In it, he was being led away by the police, handcuffed and defeated. "I tipped them off," I revealed, watching as the last vestiges of her composure crumbled. "He's going to pay for his crimes, just as you have paid for yours." Jasmine sank to her knees, the papers scattering around her like fallen leaves. "Why, James? Why go this far?" "Because betrayal begets betrayal," I replied, my voice firm, devoid of sympathy. "You chose this path, Jasmine, the moment you decided to deceive me." Leaving her amidst the chaos of her fractured world, I turned and walked away. The night had fully settled now, the stars hidden behind a veil of clouds, reflecting the darkness that had descended upon us both. As I walked, a strange peace settled over me. The storm of vengeance had passed, and in its wake, I felt a grim satisfaction. Jasmine and Derek's lives were irrevocably altered, their futures uncertain and shadowed by their choices. But as the city lights faded behind me, a new realization dawned. This was not just the end of their deception, it was the end of the man I had been. From the ashes of my old self, a new path lay open, one marked not by vengeance but by the possibility of redemption. And so, I stepped into the unknown, the echoes of my past receding into the night, a silent testament to the cost of betrayal and the harsh justice it had wrought.